What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Star Bros podcast. We are excited to have you joining us here this afternoon, evening. It's evening for us. We are really excited to talk to you about something I feel like we've been waiting a really long time for. You've all been able to watch now, hopefully the first 4 episodes, and I'll put the notice out here now. Spoiler alerts. We're going to be diving deep into the series Andor. Honestly, it feels like we've been waiting forever. And we finally got it. I'm just so happy the day is finally here. But before we jump into all that, I am joined as always by my bro host Jan Solo,
and I'm joined by my bro host Ben Skywalker.
And this is a bit of a special episode because, one, Ian decided to drench all of our plans. You see what I did there, and I'm full of them tonight. You just wait till we get to the title. And we are recording this one from our individual homes. So that's one. But the second thing that makes this kind of special is I think as long as everything's in the cards correctly, like we're gonna put this one with our faces on it online. It's gonna be
pretty
weird.
Wild. Yes, this is us. Wild. Here we are. Hope you're not disappointed.
You're like, oh man, I love knowing that they kind of.
I loved not seeing
their faces. Yeah, I was like, I don't know what to say anymore.
Well, here we are, and we're happy to be here. But yeah, Ian kind of messed up some of our plans. We were messaging with Chris earlier saying that we'd love to record in person, but neither of us owns an ARC, so we got to do what we got to do.
You said that. See, you're full of the good jokes. I'm full of the dad jokes. That's just how this rolls.
It's kind of you to say, but I know we have a lot to get to. It does feel like we've waited a long time, but I wanted to show you something real quick before we get into some of the news, and it might be a good segue into the news.
Oh, I have a feeling I know what it is then, if you're saying it's a segue into the news.
You do?
Uh-huh.
Well, what I've got here...
Is it my pass?
2 passes.
Told ya.
For New York City Comic-Con for this coming Saturday. One-day passes.
Exciting. You and Jess are going to have a great time.
Well, actually, I'm taking you because it's your early birthday present.
Get out.
And we're going to have the opportunity to spend the whole day with our people. It's not celebration. Someday we'll get to celebration, but we're going to be with the Star Wars fans and the comic book fans and all the people who
are
our people.
Fans, DC fans are in there too. There's a ton of them.
All those cool people. And I don't know if they'll do it this year, but I've been once before in my life. And one of the things that was a real treat was they don't have like a cafeteria in the building, but they invite a whole bunch of different New York City food trucks, and they all park outside in an enclosed space. And you can just go kind of food truck to food truck and try all the amazing New York City food. So perhaps we'll do that for a meal or two.
Can't wait. I do like a good New York dining experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not being facetious when I say that. Like, there's so much good food there.
There really is. There is. And a lot of it happens to be served out of trucks that, move around. And every once in a while you get to catch them. This time they come to you. They're all going to park right outside. Yeah, it's going to be. So we're going to be next to people in cosplay, having whatever it is that people eat out of the food trucks these days. And it's just going to be a good time. And we're going to be doing a lot of live tweeting that day. We're going to post a lot of pictures. So we're going to try to make it, for anybody who can't be there, we're going to try to make it feel like you can be there and be with us.
Yes. Yeah, I like that idea. And just in case Lucasfilm is listening, food trucks are great, and New York's a really terrible place to put a Star Wars celebration, but Philly would be a great place. We got the Reading Terminal Market right across the street from the convention center. Cheesesteaks, everything.
Pierogies.
Let's stop there. But there's a ton of great food, and there's a lot more parking, and some really cool podcasters there from Broaxium. So we would love it.
A ton, more than you would think.
Yes.
More just sort of like active Star Wars creators than you would think.
Father and son. One of the biggest, a guy who I went to school with, one of the biggest lightsaber designers and producers in the whole world is here in the Philly suburbs. I could go on, but we've got some show to get to. But yeah, just think about it. You gave us the nice segue, and I'm taking it away. By the way, you segued so quickly away from all my poor jokes that you didn't let me get to tell the name of this episode.
Oh yeah, please do. Please.
Oh yeah. So because we're talking about Cassian, and because we learned a little tidbit about Cassian in this episode that was really interesting, specifically his name, before it was Cassian.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna brace myself for this.
I mean, you already know it's coming because I told you all of them. I should tell you the fans the rest of the names I came up with and how bad those were. Um, Casa Noir is what
Ooh,
we're calling this one.
that you know what that sounds
You
like?
get it?
I get it. Well, let's just wait a beat.
Did you get it before I explained it to you though?
If you would have led with that one, maybe wouldn't have gotten it. I mean, I would have connected, I guess, back to Cassian's actual name.
Yeah,
Um, and
hopefully.
it is kind of dark and gritty and noir. But now that I think about it, it sounds like a cologne that you can get at the drugstore.
Ooh, that would be a terrible cologne if I think about all the smells that were probably in this show.
The holidays are coming up. You know, you are late to a get together with your family or whatever, and you're like, I guess I'll run into Rite Aid and see what they have.
I really want to smell like Lord of the Flies tonight.
And they have a Casa Noir gift set with
Uh-uh.
a disposable razor and some
Uh-uh.
cologne.
Let's move on.
Um,
This is making it worse. I immediately regret this name.
I like it. We're committed to it. We're not going to go back and edit that out. So this
Okay.
episode's
All
called
right.
called Casa Noir.
Yeah, because, Casablanca was a very famous film. Okay, I've explained it to everybody, hopefully now. But at the same time, Noir, this is a bit more of a darker series,
Yep.
right? All right,
Yeah.
I've explained more than I needed to. Hopefully everybody got it before I got to that part. But how about we get to the first segment?
Please.
Do you want to do that? Oh,
Sure.
wait, no, I do that. Okay.
You do that.
N- 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 I'm trying to see if I can throw you off from your little game. News from across the galaxy. Nope. Right on cue.
I was ready to go. And I think we were talking about right before we hit record. There's only two pieces of news, but yeah, a
Right.
couple, but they're meaningful pieces of
Yes,
news.
they
So
are.
what do you want to go with first?
Well, you already led the segue into New York Comic Con. Let's talk about that.
Yes, New York Comic Con this weekend. One of the highlights of New York Comic Con, one of the things that we were kind of keeping our eye out, we didn't know was going to happen, but we were keeping our eye out for, is there's going to be a High Republic panel.
Yes.
So I think the day that we're there, Saturday, 3 p.m., in one of the panel rooms, there's going to be, I think, almost all of the writers and creators who are involved in the High Republic.
Yes.
We had the opportunity back on Podathon Day to talk to Charles Soule.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned he's going to be there.
Yes.
And he also mentioned he couldn't share anything that he's going to share. So
Or Lucasfilm would have,
they
probably
would have
stripped him of his title,
they would
job,
have
and
been
everything
upset.
else in between. Yeah.
They would have been upset. Which, by the way, I just saw that he, who we've discussed this before, is by education an attorney, and he was just a legal consultant on the television show She-Hulk. And
No
so,
way.
yes, I guess he lent some of that expertise to that show. But anyway, he said he's going to be there. He's going to announce some stuff. Couldn't even give us like the tiniest teaser. So whatever it is, it's big. But
Yeah.
the important thing is that this lines up with the beginning of phase 2 of the High
Mm-hmm.
Republic. And an important thing about phase 2 is it's not necessarily all going to be in the same time.
Yes.
So, for example, the Cavan Scott series, which begins next week, I think October 12th is the day that Cavan Scott's issue number 1 of phase 2 in Marvel comes out, is 150 years before what we've been following along. And he's mentioned Jeddah, Kyber crystals,
Yeah.
lots of cool stuff is going to be going on there.
So is it, I think if my math is right, this is 250 years before Phantom Menace?
that sounds right. Don't
I
hold me
think
to it.
okay. I can't remember every detail of the High Republic, but it's all been good so far. So I'm looking forward to what's next. Speaking of which, one of the first entries into the second phase of the High Republic is going to be Justina Ireland's book that is coming out on October 4th. I've got the name of it right here. Let me just flip my page. It's called The Path of Deceit, a young adult novel. There was an excerpt of it that was dropped online, which I actually haven't had the chance to read yet. So I'm going to go read it right after I'm done recording.
No, me either.
But from the little details that I gathered, it sounds interesting. So yeah, they're getting started pretty quickly with that, and then they'll drop more details of what's to come this Saturday for us. I would imagine that they'll live stream it somewhere or like make it available in some
Yeah.
way at for those who can't be there, like they did that with a lot of the Lucasfilm panels. Or, well, I mean, I'm thinking of Star Wars Celebration, at least. Like tons of stuff with Star Wars
Yeah.
Celebration was streamed online. So I would hope that they will do the same for this one if they haven't announced that already. But
I'd like to
we'll at
think
least share
so.
what we learn with you,
Yeah,
what we can share.
we'll do our best to bring you along, and highlight all the cool stuff. But we'll also let you know if there's just a live stream, and then we can all kind of jump in and watch it together. But yeah, we plan to
Yeah.
be there, and we'll try to take away all the important stuff and bring it back to you as soon as possible.
Yes. Was there anything else from the High Republic other than that? I mean, the only other thing with New York Comic Con was that it sounds like there's going to be a lot of exclusives, like there always are, that you can get while you're there. I was looking at a few of them. I probably will grab for Chris. He'll probably jump in on the recording in just a second and be like, "You better grab this for me." The Funko Pop of Anakin Skywalker that
He said he wants two.
he wants two, which means I have to get three because I'm getting one too.
Yeah, we'll get you two, Chris. I guess you can bring a bag. I mean, if you can cosplay and bring in all that stuff, you can bring a backpack, right?
Oh, sure. And if you don't, hey, thank you for the segue again. And if you can't get a backpack in there, you can always buy a backpack because they're going to be selling a lot of Star Wars backpacks. Like I looked at, there are like 4 or 5 different variants of them.
You're
One of them was
right.
like Ahsoka, the other one was like a Obi-Wan and stuff. So they looked like there were a lot of really cool backpacks.
Yeah, and you know what they did is some of them, like remember they had the Boba Fett jacket came out, I think
do.
for Columbia Sportswear maybe.
Yes.
It wasn't like it was the colors of Boba Fett. It was recognizable once. Well, it was recognizable for us as kind of like super fans, but like the average person on the street might not notice that it has anything to do with Star Wars. There's like 1 or 2 backpacks that are like that, and then the other ones are very obviously just super cool Star Wars backpacks.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
like this one has like a Rebel insignia. Like one of them at least does. Like right in this middle of the backpack. Like if you don't know like the Star Wars backpack at that point, like you don't know what Star Wars is.
And then right? I saw like the details are nice. Like
yes,
look, we're not getting paid to talk about this, but the details of these backpacks are nice. One of them on the inside, maybe all of them, like within the stitching had the Star Wars logo and things like that. It seems like they a lot of good details. But
it made me wish that I had a backpack or a reason to use a backpack right now, because I don't really.
I use one for work all the time. Yeah.
Oh really? I use a messenger bag.
Okay. All right. Well, that's one way to do it.
Oh, wow, I feel a lot of judgment coming from that. Wow. Okay. Am I doing it wrong?
I just ordered a new backpack, a new Jan Sport backpack.
I got that. Oh, okay. You're starting to get into the dad jokes.
Yeah, I guess so. I am a cat dad, but how about the other piece of news?
Yeah. Well, was there anything else from Comic-Con? I've kind of read it. There's a bunch of stuff. We'll share more as we go. We're definitely going to stop by the Lucasfilm table.
Maybe one other quick thing. If you're there and you'd like to connect, we're going to bring a big stack of Star Bros Broaxium stickers, and we will be giving them out. So it'd be nice to meet you, take a picture, shake your hand, whatever, give you a bunch of stickers, and just sort of enjoy the whole atmosphere together.
Yeah, totally. All right, we can get to the other piece of news now. I delayed us for that one.
No, go for it.
This one's sad. Kind of,
sorta,
but expected. So everybody knows that in Obi-Wan, we were blessed with the wonderful talents and voice once again of James Earl Jones, who does this one guy that you might have heard of called Darth Vader. Have you heard of him?
He's definitely top 50 character for sure.
Top 50. He barely cracked it or something. What? Oh my gosh. He's in the top 5. Let's just at least say that. Like he'd have to be in the top 5 of all time, right?
He's a top 1 or 2 character.
I'm talking about like all cinema too. Like
oh yeah,
fan of this thing. Our list, he's top, but no, it's fantastic the work that he's done throughout his career. What is he, like 91? He's like, I can't remember his exact age right now, but it's 90s, I'm pretty sure.
And that's the thing that I think is, a little bit bittersweet about it is like he's at a point in his life where he can look back and say, wow, what a ride, this has been wonderful. The part that kind of takes the edge off of the sadness for me is that he was very clear. And I guess whenever they were kind of wrapping up his deal with Disney Lucasfilm, he was very clear that he wants them to 91 years old. Wow. God bless him. He's very clear that he wants, that's a good guess, that he wants them to continue to use what the re-speecher technology that Lucasfilm has, which means they basically got his voice to continue to reuse. It's not just going to be him standing at the mic. But I just think it's been a wonderful ride, and I appreciate that the fandom has different opinions on things sometimes and different takes on things sometimes. But I think we have always, all of us have loved hearing James Earl Jones as Darth Vader. And I always go back to that was a thing. Remember the story about how he went and recorded it? And he like ate lunch at home and told his wife he'd be back in a little bit. 2 hours later, he was home. He ate dinner at home, and that ended up being Darth Vader. That ended up being Star Wars, and it was just a
Amazing.
gig. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. So you never know. You never know what's going to take off. But we are tremendously grateful to James Earl Jones for all he has done for the Star Wars saga. He will always be
I
the voice of Darth Vader.
We forgot the tagline of all that. He's retiring. He's not going anywhere. He's just retiring as the voice of Darth Vader, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
let's just be clear on that. And it's an amazing career, like you were saying, like all the things that
That
he
was
was able to do for
45
the
years
character.
ago.
Right? Yeah. I mean, not just for the character, but for other characters too. I mean, we've heard of this other guy, Mufasa, that's pretty good too. Um,
That's true. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, we're just talking about Darth Vader, but it would take us a whole episode just to read through his resume, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm glad he's going out on his own terms. It feels a little bit like, I mean, end of an era, right? John Williams
Sure.
kind of did the same thing and was just like, "Hey, this is my one contribution, and then I'm kind of done." And then he's like dabbled and come back a little bit since then because no person with that amount of talent could really like ride off into the sunset and never write another song again.
No, no,
um,
that's just what he does. He's not going to
yeah.
stop writing music, and I'm sure James Earl Jones is not going to stop being creative in some way.
Do you like the idea of his voice coming back and stylized or mechanized, what it was the word that I'm looking for, done
Mechanized?
mechanically? Yeah,
Yeah.
mechanized, I guess. Is that how you pronounce it? It sounds dumb.
I don't know. I usually have some difficulty with words, so I'm not the right guy to ask. But
That's why I was like, what? And do you like the idea of that?
I think of like I think back to the George Lucas direction that he gave his people about the main characters of Star Wars, and he always talks about how they got to have a recognizable silhouette. We've talked about
Yeah.
this before, and if you think about like Darth Vader, Yoda, some of the core characters, they do have a recognizable silhouette, and I
Yeah.
just feel like Darth Vader has that voice, and that is the Darth Vader voice. And and anything else where you try to mess with it at all too much, and fans are going to feel it, and it's going to take away the credibility of that experience. And I just think if we want to continue to see Darth Vader in anything, then if the technology is to the point where we can use it to have him do the talking in the way that we would recognize. Just let's go with it. I don't have any beef with it, and
Yeah.
I think James Earl Jones is going to continue to get paid for that, so it works out for everybody.
True. Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of one of two minds on this. Like, I totally do it if it works and if it, you know,
Yeah,
can convince the average person that it's not a machine that's doing
right,
it. I'm not talking about the person that knows for sure this news that he's retired and he's not coming back, and so they know it's not him. I'm
right.
talking about someone who just doesn't know any of this, any background. Is like, yeah, that sounds just like that. Like the New Hope, same thing, right? Um, if it can convince that person, I'm good. But what I will say is I feel like we've gotten so much of his story that there shouldn't be too many examples where we'll see this happen. I mean,
Yeah,
it might be just like maybe a little
like
bit here, a little bit there.
flashes of a split
Sure.
second moment or something, a line, but yeah, there's not going to be another a whole
It's
Darth
not
Vader
like
series.
it's not we're talking about season 2 of Obi-Wan where the whole entire time you see him on screen is, you know, it's a mechanical voice.
Right.
So I'm not really worried about it. If it comes back and is the right part of the story, that's all that matters to me. And if it works. So
Yep.
that's all I'll say.
Cool.
Um, cool. I think that's it for the news. Like we said, there's not much. We talked not too long ago, and the biggest piece of news is Cassian. Cassian has dropped. We've gotten 4 episodes, the first 3 in the first week, as promised. So let's just talk about that.
let's jump into it. Let's get into our next segment, which is called More to the Story.
Dun, 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 dun. You kind of the internet must have flickered just a little bit
Oh, it
because you
did?
went more and then it paused
Oh,
and then to the story. So I
I
laughed. I'm like, perfect timing.
I went through it. We got the whole jingle in. We don't have to redo it or anything. But yeah,
We don't. It's
we
just
got
gonna
4
sound funny.
episodes. So I think when it was first announced, I think we were expecting it earlier than we got it. I think we were expecting
Yes.
to get it in
August.
August, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm glad when it finally came out that we got those first 3 episodes. I mean, that was a pretty stacked Wednesday to be able to get all of that. But it did seem
Yeah.
like a little bit of a wait. Um, but
And now that we've seen all 3 of them back to back to back, I'm glad they did that. I
yes,
would have been worried of people getting lost after the second one, be like, "Okay, where is this going, people?" Like, it's a little bit slower and stuff, and
sure.
I'm fine with that, like, build it out. There are reasons why I'm glad they did it that way, and we'll talk about later. But are you glad that they dropped all 3 at once, and do you think that made
Oh
it work
yeah.
better?
Oh yeah, and not just from the perspective of like I'm like a Star Wars binger. Like if you gave me the whole season, I probably would have sat through a lot of the whole first season without sleeping. Um, but I thought that those first 3 episodes did work really well together because there were some um, slow kind of plot development moments, character development moments where it wasn't clear how the dots connected just yet. There was exposition; they were building things up a little bit, and there's this
Yeah,
whole kind of like jumping around and the development of Cassian, especially. Like this is like the first 3 episodes. That's like a deep background story. Um,
yeah. Well, because they
and
had to explain why he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old, and we
people
got that.
people are hung up on that line. People are like, that seems pretty young, dude. Like, what's the story?" And so we had to jump back in time, and um, I think that this is like a deep background development story. That it's not just the path to him becoming a hero of the Rebel Alliance. Um, it's the story of the development of the Rebel Alliance, and it's all kind of in the context of stuff that we know. Uh, but I also, just thought like, okay, getting this all together at once felt cinematic too. It felt like I was watching a
Yeah,
movie,
yeah,
and I wonder how much of this is meant to be experienced like a movie, and
yeah.
a very long movie when it's done, and episode 4 is the longest one yet, so not sure how long the whole thing's gonna be when it's done, but it did feel like I was sitting down to watch a movie, and it felt like it worked that way for me.
What worked was, we'll talk about Cassie in a second, but the fact that they made it longer. I said we would get to this later, and I'm getting to it now. But they spent the time developing all the stage characters.
Yes.
You got a lot of Bix, you got a lot of Tim, you got a lot of a little bit of Marva, right? And all of these characters. Oh, Syril, and the whole
Mm,
corporate
mhm.
group over there, and all of that was really important to set the stages for some of the stuff I believe we're still gonna get later. But second, because at the very end of, the 3rd episode, one of the things I really liked was as Cassian was leaving the planet, they were panning around to everybody and showing them, like, all the people they had introduced, and you felt a little bit more of a connection to them because they weren't just, like, a face in passing or someone
Yep.
with a few lines.
Yep.
Like, they had whole scenes and interactions with Cassian, and you saw how they connected to him as a character, and I think we're gonna go back to Ferrex later on in this series. Like, if you go back to the trailers, like, there seems to be more action there than what we, have gotten so far. So, I would imagine that this is all trying to just show how personal of a connection that
Yep.
Cassian has to these characters, and I felt that. I felt that more because they spent the time in episodes 1 and 2 and 3, uh, showing his connection and building them as characters. Bix and Tim the most, right? Their relationship and how it goes from like this, you can tell that it's not a paradise or anything, just yet. And there's some trust issues, especially for Tim. And then, where it ends up, like with, Big's very mad at Tim. And then the next second she's witnessing his death. Like it's
Yes.
very deep. It's very rough. And you don't
It's
feel that
brutal.
impact. Yeah. Brutal is the right word for it. You don't feel that impact though, if it doesn't spend the time developing it.
True, true, and I think something that's interesting about this particular one, this particular Star Wars show is I think it was the way it was described when they were kind of teasing it was, It's gonna be a Star Wars show in the Star Wars universe, but without the royal family of Star Wars, without Jedi, things
Yeah,
like that.
without the
Um,
Skywalkers.
yeah, and so you kinda even though we had this Rogue One movie, you have to spend a bunch of time getting to know people. Um, a couple things on the characters real quick. First, Tim, not the most creative Star Wars name. We are gonna file that away with Ben and
No, you add
Luke.
another M to it, and it's fine.
You're right. You did add another M, so it's spacey all of a sudden. Um, but who am
All
I
the
to
people
judge?
named Tim out there are like, "Hey,
I
it's a
know.
fine name. You can put it
It,
Star
it's
Wars."
it's a fine name, and you can add another M to it, and all
What
of
if
a
it was
sudden you're on
Randy?
Ferrix. Right?
That would have been
Randy,
great.
Randy, the jealous dude on Ferrix.
We wouldn't have been able to use that joke anymore. Everyone been like, "Why are you talking about Randy? He's a
Yeah,
great
right.
character."
Cyril's a guy's name, right? It's like an old baseball player name, but Cyril's a
It's
name.
not as common or
Not as
anything. Yeah,
common, no.
yeah.
But getting away from names a little bit. So I wanted to say something about B2 Emo, also known as
Mm.
B2 or B,
Or just
uh,
beef short. Yep.
or just B. Yep. And I think, by the way, I think there's a B Funko that's on the list of New York City
Exclusive.
exclusives. So
Mhm.
I might be getting
Might have
that
to pick that
because
one up too.
he's kind of won me over. So I wanted to give props to the B2 emo guy, Dave Chapman. You know Dave Chapman's work. Do you know what else he's done for Star
I
Wars?
know the name. Gosh dang it! What is it?
He is by trade, so he's a voice actor and a puppeteer. And so he has done the voice and the puppeteer work for both BB-8 and BB-9E.
Oh, of course.
he,
That
he
that is where I've heard it from. Okay, thank you.
he was one of the main puppeteers and TLJ when Yoda appears again. Spoiler if you haven't seen it. In
Mhm.
the Last Jedi, when Yoda appears, he's one of the main puppeteers working Yoda.
5 years, come on, it's been a yeah.
It's 5 years, yeah. And then two other interesting Star Wars characters who he was the primary puppeteer in: Lady Proxima
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
Rio Durant.
Oh, really?
And this is the guy who's doing B2. He's got a pretty good
That's
Star
pretty
Wars
cool.
pedigree, doesn't he?
That's a great pedigree. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like the use of the word pedigree. That was a good one.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I like that. Good shout out to him. And like you said, every series for Star Wars like has to introduce maybe a new kind of droid. Like it just feels obligatory at this point. Like if
I
we don't get one, it's weird.
I think it does feel obligatory, and I think one of the practical things about it is we've learned from R2 and C3PO that they can cross the boundaries of time and show
Yeah.
up in different parts of the saga and different parts of the story because they're not mortal beings. And so who knows? We may
Yeah.
have B2 forever, but then again,
I
maybe
mean,
there's a reason that
he
we
seems like he's at the end of his reserves, though. I mean, you saw the flashback with him on the ship, and he was nice and
Yep,
pristine, and then you just fast forward what 20 years or so, and he's beat
he's been
up,
through it.
different parts that don't match anymore. Like
Yep,
he's been through a lot, and he talks. I love his lines, and that's what makes him so amiable. Is that the word I can use? Like lovable
amiable.
at the beginning, amiable. Sorry, I'm missing the French word for it. But yeah, it's just one of those lines that he has make him a lot more friendly, I think, at the beginning, where he's talking about how he might have enough power reserves to lie, but then when Cassian gives him two, he's like, "That's two." Like it immediately makes him nervous. Like,
Yes.
and just I don't know, that just makes him so like people just love him right off the bat because of those fun jokes, but also because you kind of see that he's a struggling droid and like life has not been easy on him or it
Mm.
isn't at this point, and so you feel for him a bit.
Oh, totally, totally. But
So
let's get into the story a little bit. And one of the things that I like to do with this stuff is figure out where it is in the timeline. Um, so we saw Rogue One. Rogue One takes place about 20 years after Revenge of the Sith. And that is about, what do we call it, 5 years before A New Hope.
mhm.
This timeline also happens to intersect with, and some people are speculating, maybe this will lead to some crossover stuff. This timeline happens to intersect with Rebels.
Yes,
And
it's
some
true.
people have said that they think that one of the ships on Ferrix in the dock looks a
The
lot like
ghost.
the Ghost. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe. Um,
Yeah.
to,
I
to,
didn't catch the glimpse of it, so I'll trust the other eagle eye viewers out there to catch that one and love it. There's tons of Easter eggs in this. Uh
tons.
We can
And
get to other ones later, but
and
they
people
did
said that
not
there
spare.
wouldn't be. People said that there wouldn't be, but maybe the ghost is there. And then the
Yeah.
other one is Ochi of Bastoon's ship. Apparently, there a ship that
Ooh.
really looks like that might be there. So, but yeah, let's. Where would you like to begin in terms of the story itself? On Kenari.
Let's talk about Kenari for a
Okay.
second here, because to me this is what a lot of people were talking about, was how cool it was that they were showing like these other people of the Star Wars universe. Like you said, this isn't the story of the Skywalker family.
Right.
And we've kind of gotten glimpses of other people and lifestyles and things like that. Like I think of Jeddah as an example of one where we kind of see all like these pilgrims and people that are kind of like in this city that's from a past time, and Ferrex is another example of that to me, but we never really went as far back as like looking at villagers. Like the only thing that was as remotely close to this remote, see what I did there? Um, that was remotely close to, you don't see it, never mind. They live remotely, sorry. Um, was from Mandalorian season 2. I think it was episode 6. It was the Believer episode where they're passing by all those like villagers that are outside the that Imperial base that
Oh yeah.
I don't even remember what were they going to steal? They were going to steal the coordinates for Moff Gideon's ship, right?
Yes. Yep.
They're passing by the villagers as they
Hmm.
go, and one of the things that struck me about that was like, oh, I want to know more about these people and what their story is, how they're connected to the Empire, and what they think of their installing themselves on their planet, right?
Hmm.
And I feel like that's what we got out of Kenari, was a bit more of like, let's dive into this. Everyone is comparing it to House of the Lord of the Flies, right? Uh, and how it feels like this, uh, this tribe that's out there that has no connection to the story and just gets pulled in accidentally. Um, and the best part about it was that they didn't translate their language. I
Mm.
loved that. I know
Yes.
people were like, "Where are the captions?" And they're like going to see like, "Is there a problem with my captions?" When I turn the captions on, all it says is "Speaking Kenari."
That's cool. I didn't even try. I thought it was a really cool dramatic effect, and I looked into it. And here's a couple of interesting things about the language itself. So that was a very deliberate decision. Obviously, like they could have thrown some captions in, but we were all kind of able to follow along in terms of like the emotion and like the urgency at certain points, things like that. Like we kind of got the right context clues.
Yeah.
Um, Fiona Shaw, who plays Marva, who is Cassian Andor's kind of adoptive mother,
Mhm.
in an interview said that Kenari is a language, a real language with grammar and a ton of different words, and it was created for this show,
So cool.
and they only taught it to the kids.
So
So
cool.
no adults on set, because it's sort of like this planet of these poor orphan kids um, interacting with these other people who are outsiders, and literally nobody on the set, nobody can understand what they were saying, but these kids had their own language, which probably created this vibe, right, of like them making them feel like even more sort of insulated or different or whatever else.
This
um,
is a series that is officially Tolkien approved.
Yes, Tolkien. What was the
Right?
cartoon said something like, "How do you start writing a story?" And somebody's like, "I don't know, the outline, whatever." And he's, "No, you must write a whole language from scratch." And that's what they did with the Kenari language, whatever
Yes.
they're calling it.
I love
Um,
that. I didn't know that all that detail, so I appreciate you sharing that. But
Super cool, right? Super
eh,
cool.
yeah, I think that they need to do stuff like that more often. And one
Oh,
of my
please,
first
yes.
thoughts was, and I kind of shared this in other venues, and got a couple reactions. But is this a language that C-3PO knows?
Yes,
I
you mentioned that
would.
to me.
I don't know what your answer is, and I'm going to beat you to and give mine. I would say no, and here's why. This is such a remote people that there are very few people that even speak it in the galaxy. Like, no, people don't really know what this planet is and who they are. Like a few other times they show people who are like Kenari. Like when they issued the notice to get Cassian,
Yeah, they're like, "Where the
mail
heck
from
is that?"
Kenari. Most
Yeah,
people are like, I don't know this place, right? So I
yeah.
don't think it's well known enough for it to be. I mean, then other people could say, well, he knows 6 million forms of communication, and I respond to like, yeah, but it's a big galaxy, so
There's billions of planets probably in this
it's got to be
galaxy,
somebody who
but
doesn't know.
yeah, I don't think he knows it. I'd be really surprised, and it sounds like, um, it sounds like whoever's been mining that planet, it looks like they've basically almost stripped it clean. There's probably not much
Yeah.
left, and so there's probably not much reason for people to go there and interact with those people, the poor people who are left behind. Which I think that that's a real criticism of some things that have happened in real life in our world,
Yeah.
of how those poor kids are treated. But I don't think C-3PO knows that language. That
I don't.
probably maybe in a future update now that it's getting popular. Um, but I don't think he knew that one. But here's something else that was interesting that I found in some of my research. So the ship that crashes and the kids start interacting with the ship and they're all freaked out and they're all kind of like armed up and ready to go.
Yep.
Did you notice the logos on the ship?
Separatist.
Yes. There's the
Yeah.
Confederacy of Independent Systems, and
Mhm.
they will probably become separatists. Um,
Mm.
so that's an interesting angle there too. That their
Mhm.
first interaction with these people, not the nicest people, um,
Mhm.
and and there that is Cassian Andor's, who's that at this point just Cass, or Casa, is
Casa.
it
Casa. Yeah.
Casa? That is how he's kind of pulled in to the rebellion. He's pulled
Mhm.
in by Marva, and some people online were critical about this. Like, he didn't have a choice in that. They just picked him up and they dragged him into this life. Uh, and it's something that
But
he
her
seems,
reasoning was, I mean, maybe everybody survived, or maybe
yeah,
what happened was the people, or the kids that were at the site that were kind of fighting back against that Confederate group, they all were taken care of, and for more a very terrible way to say that,
yeah,
um, and people like Casa's sister were
hmm,
left untouched because they were, miles away in the village still.
yeah.
So I think that she was probably justified in right, at least in her point of view, right? Truth in her point of view, saving him from an atrocity that she believed was coming and
She
had every
definitely,
reason to believe that it was coming.
right. She believed that she was saving him, and so
Yeah.
therefore she was acting um, on good conscience and trying to get something good to happen. But some people are a little bit critical of like, yeah, it's not something he picked for himself.
Again,
But
though, if there was reason to be critical, don't you think he would be the first to be critical as the character who was
I
adopted
think
later
so.
on? Like, they had a
I
good
think so.
relationship.
Um, I think so. But maybe let's jump to kind of thinking about our buddy Cyril and
Yes.
Andor side by side, because I think there it's like the I think it's sort of like Mr. Glass and what's his name in Unbreakable, that
Unbreakable,
fantastic
yeah,
M. Night Shyamalan movie.
yeah.
I keep wanting to say Bruce Wayne, but that's Batman for anybody who doesn't know. What's that
It's
guy's
because
name?
his I don't know,
Bruce
Bruce
Willis.
Willis.
Bruce Willis,
Yeah,
whatever his character's name is.
yeah,
Mr. Glass is always kind of looking for the antidote to whatever darkness he's bringing into the world.
yeah.
Um, there's some weird parallels between those two, and
Yeah.
the one that stands out to me the most that I didn't arrive at, but somebody online pointed out to me was um, when Cassian comes home on Ferrix to Marva, she knows that he's wanted a wanted man. She starts out, have you told anybody you're from Kenari? Things like she's pretty upset
Mhm,
with him.
mhm.
What happens when Cyril goes home to his mom? She opens the door and she slaps him across the face.
Yes.
Coming things to their mothers where their moms are not happy to see them for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And I think these parallels are going to continue to play out where they're running off in very different directions in this world, or in this galaxy, but they're both, you pointed out, they both have their ambitions, and so
Yes.
they're looking to accomplish quite a bit, but not nearly in the same direction.
Cyril is out to make a name for himself, and you can tell that from the way he goes about, uh, defying orders, even though there was a lot of justification for why he defied them. Like, he doesn't really like that he's being told to ignore 2 potential murders,
Yeah,
and that just doesn't sit well with him. So you gotta tip your hat to that to trying to do what's right. And in trying to do what's right, like, he's stripped of everything. Gosh, I mean, there were some y like, you wanted to hate him because he was chasing after the hero in this, but at the same time, like, this would have been the hero in many other stories. This would have been, like, I don't know, RoboCop, or can't think of a good like
Yes,
parallel of like a Starsky and Hutch. It
you're
really did feel
totally
like
right.
Starsky and Hutch with the Linus Moss guy. Like he was hilarious. I loved him, and he's the one
Y
who brought us our first cuss word, like really bad one,
yes. Yep.
in Star Wars, which we won't say because this is still a family friendly podcast.
It still is, and it will continue to be. But, yeah, so you're right. If you carve out a lot of, everything else that we know about this universe, like, it seems like he's acting on a good impulse. Like,
Yeah.
how can you look past a couple of your coworkers being killed, in cold blood? Make up a story to cover it up that's semi-heroic or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't blame him for a lot of that stuff, but that you also get all these signals pretty early on that it's like, "This guy's exhausting." Like, he tailored his own uniform to have it fit better. Like little little things like that, or I'm just like I'm rolling my eyes watching this guy, and I think you're supposed to. But you know what else I thought was interesting about him? When they really get into it on Ferrex, and he's holed up in one of these buildings, and Andor comes up behind him and puts the gun to the back of his head.
Yeah.
Something tells me about that moment, and when they see the explosions and stuff like that, I don't think he has a lot of real experience with this stuff.
No.
I don't think I think he threw himself into it, maybe not expecting it to be quite as gory, to lose people, all
Yeah.
that stuff. Um, but that I think that's hard to come back from too. Like,
Yeah.
like why would you just walk away from Corpo, and all that stuff? Like, how can you just let that stuff go? Like, it seems to me like that really solidified him as a villain for a big part of the story going forward.
I don't I you think it cemented him as a villain?
I do. I
I
do.
disagree. Well, I mean, I'll be the first to say that I'm wrong if this goes the other way, but I think this is the seeds of a rebellion, of someone who wants to rebel.
Okay. All right.
That's
I
potentially.
like your idea better.
So here's why. Here's some of the reasons why. And I think what makes it key is episode 4. We don't get much of him. I mean, at the very end of his failed attempt to capture Cassian at the end of episode 3, he's just awestruck. He just can't even fathom that he's lost.
Yep.
And it's literally his army of a dozen plus guys going up against two. At first, he thought it was one, then it was two, but he still got the advantage, and he loses outright. Like, gets outsmart everything. Underestimates the town and their involvement, which was amazing. The way that they were banging on the making all that noise and things like that. Which I can't remember where I read, but I think I read something like that was inspired from some actual like real life cultures. I can't, but again, I can't, since I don't remember exactly where. I'm not going to try to quote it.
You know
Do
what
you?
else that's inspired from? I saw that too. I'm not sure about the banging on the pots and stuff, but at one point, the guy who cusses, and I can't remember, that
Linus
particular
Linus
Linus,
Mosk.
that character at one point says something, I think over the radio, that they've taken down all the street signs, so they're not sure where they are. And
Mm,
that has been a tactic in conflicts for a long time when a place is being invaded. In fact, when Russia was invading Ukraine, that's one of the things that like all the local municipalities said, like, take down all your street signs.
interesting.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so Belgium back in like or Brussels specifically back in like the, I don't know, whatever 15th, 16th century that it was built. Uh Maybe before, maybe after, I'm probably missing it by a century or two. All of the roads were constructed so that they didn't go directly into the center of the city. They were like kind of off at an angle.
Because
So
it made
you
it
were
too easy
almost
to invade?
no, I guess to make it more disorienting. So they didn't know how to get to the center. So they didn't know how to go and like
Oh,
capture City Hall.
got it.
And so, the way the roads are constructed, you can literally look at a map of Brussels and see none of the roads really go to the center. They always kind of go off at an angle.
And see
So it was very
what that
specific.
does is it makes it so that the people who have lived there for years know how to get around,
Oh
and
yeah,
if you're just trying to run in and take over, it's a little bit harder.
it's
Just
a little,
one
yeah.
more hurdle. So I think that was part of it, but
Until sat nav was introduced, as they like to say in our English and Australian countries. GPS. Then it was like, okay, now they can get to the center pretty easily.
now they can. But yeah,
But so anyway, my point though on Cyril, was he had this terrible ordeal, right? Again, he thinks he's being the good guy, and frankly, if the story was told a different way, he probably is painted as the good guy. We just see him as this overambitious, imperial aligned officer who
Yep.
has, aspirations to do more within the imperial side of the equation, and so we treat him as a bad guy. But
Yeah.
what makes him feel a little bit more real is when he goes home, and if you caught this, I think this is Coruscant. Is it not?
It's got to be.
I
Yeah.
think it is. They didn't
Because
have, like, a flash or anything, but well, go ahead.
he went from, I think, one of the agency offices on Coruscant, um, back to his mom's place on Coruscant. I think
Yes.
it's all the same planet, I think.
So, not just that, but how did he get to his mom's place? He took the elevator, and he took it down a lot of levels to the point where you didn't really see sunlight very much anymore.
And that's
It
a
was
thing.
dingy.
We've talked about that. The
Yeah.
higher up you are,
Yeah.
like Padme's apartment is
Yeah.
probably really posh and expensive. It looks nice, right?
Mhm.
Um, the Syrils of the world, their moms probably live in a different place, and that informs his perspective on life, right?
And can you imagine this boy growing up in that area, in the lower levels of Coruscant, just going, "I wanna get out of this. I want to live a better life for myself." And and he left home, obviously not on good terms with his mom. That's why he was greeted the way that he was, and it was cold and everything, but a mom never stops loving her son, so you saw her eventually embrace him. Um, but I think that's all a big expose into his character, and that's why I figured if he comes back, he's coming back for revenge, and it's not going to be against the people that outsmarted him. It's going to be
Ah,
against the people who didn't see what he was trying to do there, that he was disobeying off his officer's orders because there was a reason to do that, and he was being ambitious but didn't have the right crew. And so
mm.
I would imagine he's pretty upset at
I
the Imperials at this
I
point.
see. I don't know. I'm struggling with that a little bit, and I think we'll find out a bit more in the next episode. But part of me is like, um, he might now kind of. I can't find a better word. He might go rogue himself, and he might be so committed to taking out this Cassian Andor guy out of revenge, out of spite,
Could be
because
either. Yeah.
he has lost so much now. Now the pre-Ox Morlana corporate independent affiliate zone is now under permanent Imperial authority. He even lost the place, like he lost his people, his job, which seems like it was his identity.
But he's
Um,
not gonna be welcomed back with the Imperials anytime soon.
He's not. So I think he's sort of like a rogue guy who is a complicating factor for Cassian because he just can't let it go,
But
and he
isn't
wants
that
to take.
Cassian? Like, Cassian's the rogue guy. He could be
That's
pals
what I'm
with him.
saying. I think there's parallels between these
I know, I
guys,
like that.
but it's a conflicting parallel where they're kind of they're I think they have similar emotional kind of setups and stuff, and I think they're gonna butt heads again. But um
I'm rooting for him now, though. I just like him too much now after seeing episode 4 that I'm hoping that I don't have to root against him again.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But
We'll see, we'll see. Well, we
I
talked a lot about Syril.
we did, and I think he's a really important character, and I think people are having very strong reactions to him on
Yeah.
the interwebs. But
Yes.
let's talk about Luthen, because
Yes.
Luthen is a key character in this story, and is key to Cassian's origin story as being part of the Rebel Alliance. And we meet him in sort of like a really kind of like typical tough guy, kind of cold and calculated way. He sort of marches in. He's not really afraid of anything. They're supposed to have this exchange where he's going to buy this box from, and I don't even know what this thing is. Not exactly. He's going to buy this
Star
box
Path
from,
unit?
yeah, the Star Path unit. Yeah.
I looked it up. Hold on a second. I looked it up to see exactly what it was. 1 second. It was a
What a nerd.
Be quiet. I know it's painful. It's an untraceable NS9 Star Path unit.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it says
I thought the NS10s were better. Couple different upgrades. We can talk about that another time.
whatever. It's it's specifically designed to track imperial coordinates for 9 radial parsecs. So what that means is it can tell you exactly where other imperial ships are located
That's
within a
valuable.
certain radius. That's
I'm glad you looked
valuable.
that up. Yeah, I'm glad you
Yes.
looked. I can see why somebody would want. I can see why anybody would want that if they
I
don't
mean,
like the
it can
Empire.
give the enemy all your positions.
Very cool.
within your vicinity. Like, that's a big deal, right?
A big deal.
So, that's what
But
it is.
so Luthen is the guy who makes contact with him, and it's not super clear to me how he sort of picked him out or anything. But he gets there. He gets to Ferrix.
I have a theory, but keep going.
Okay, he gets to Ferrix. They end up in a sticky situation. They end up getting off of Ferrix, and there begins the negotiation to pull him into this budding version of the rebellion.
Yeah.
And there's where I think another really good contrast comes into place, where it's like, um, I wrote this down because it's a little bit complicated, but what we're seeing on Coruscant a little bit from the Empire side is we're seeing the ISB, which is a sister organization to the Imperial Intelligence Organization, which Orson Krennic was a part of,
Yep.
um, which is also part of or under the umbrella of the Commission for Security of the New Order, also known as Compor, which is also related to Inquisitorius, that organization, which we know well from the Kenobi show.
Yep.
So contrast that with these people who are on the side of like a rainy hill somewhere, like 6 or 7 people who aren't super well organized, have a little bit of money to work with, have a little bit of support. But remember that this is the same time period as Rebels.
Yeah.
So one of the things that comes out early on in the Rebel series is this rebellion thing is just like patchwork,
Little pockets.
little pockets all over the place. And then
Yeah.
again, compare that to the Empire, where it's like everything's got acronyms already. They're uniforms, and it's just like super bureaucratically structured and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what hit me from episode 4 was like, it makes everything that follows in Star Wars more impressive because it seems like the Empire 20-ish years after, it just seems like so well organized and whatever. And it seems like the rebellion is just scraping
It
by.
seems like that because the emperor runs a tight ship, and secondly, he's had a long time to plot this and everything, and he pulls the best of the best that were in the Republic at that time
Yeah.
to make his empire. So yeah, they're really well together, but you have to remember, like the galaxy is in a fickle place. It's really delicate to try to maintain that order, but also to do it with such uh, a nascent group.
Yeah.
So I think the rebellion has its advantage because they're just coming in of their own, trying to build their own thing too at the same time. So, but I think the Empire does have its leg up. I mean, they have the Death Star, so that helps.
Yes. Yes.
um. So yeah. Anyway,
And they're capable of building the Death Star, which is
right.
not
They
something
have the
that they could.
resources.
Yeah, which not
Fear.
isn't something they could even imagine. But so Cassian goes into this as Clem, which was his adoptive father's name. And
Ooh,
yes,
I didn't
so
know.
yeah, um, and I can't remember. I think maybe Marva says it to Clem when they're collecting him. But yeah, Clem is the name he takes. And again, I think this
Mm,
this one, after all that action, all that craziness from episode 3, it felt like episode 4 was another little bit of like a building episode
yeah.
of we're gonna start to heat things up a little bit, and episode 5, 6, and so on, things are gonna explode again.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so what was your take on where we're leaving off on episode 4? Because I know that we are coming up on time because we're running a pretty tight episode this time around.
We are, yeah. So a couple of my theories, I guess, where this ties back to, let's go back to where this whole entire thing started, and that was Cassian is looking for his sister, and he goes into a pretty shady place to find her.
Yeah, we didn't
Um,
even mention that. Yeah.
well, and we don't need to. Again, we'll keep this family friendly and not. I mean, but they are making this a very dark and more adult kind of series. I was fine with some of the things that they showed, and it was more because of how they were showed. Like they didn't go over the top. Just they were in the location, and you knew where they were, but they didn't really go beyond that.
Yep.
So I made it okay. It made it better for me, I should say. But that's where we start, is where he's looking for his sister, and more specifically, we get the part where Luthen drops a line about his father
Mm,
and how his father died, and that really sets Cassian off. Now, I'm imagining that he's talking about his birth father in this moment, and part of the reason is because um, there's got to be something, and maybe we just haven't seen enough of the Kenari yet, and how it's just all these kids. And maybe there's something like with the rituals, maybe the kids kind of have to grow up separately on their own, and then whatever they believe in their rituals and things like that. That's the reason why they're separate. Maybe there is a mining accident and all the parents were kind of gone for that reason, and now the kids are just left to raise each other
That
type thing.
that's been hinted at, yeah.
That I could see that too. Um, but then again, like he obviously knows a little bit what he's talking about. So I imagine there's more to like Cassian's family coming up, including his sister. And then that led me thinking, like, how does he know all of this stuff? And I'm trying to find. I wrote down her name. What was the name of the girl in episode 4 that was at the shop with him, where we get Mon Mothma for the first time, and we need to talk her before this ends too.
Yeah, I don't recall her name.
Yeah, I wonder if that's his sister.
Could be.
We'll find
Could
out,
be.
but
We
he's
we
got to get his
will.
information from somewhere about him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was my thought.
Eh, eh,
And Luthen's keeping information about how he knows Cassian from her, so there could be
mm.
explanations.
Yeah, and I think hopefully get a little bit more of that in the next episode. But I did want to point out very quickly, going back to Cassian's introduction in the series, something that also is a parallel or mirrors Rogue One when we first meet him is it's a little bit cold blooded when we first meet him.
Oh yeah,
Like it sort of has an opportunity just to make a run for it, but
we knew he was
decides
capable of that.
we knew he was capable of that, but this might have been the first ones, though. One of the
Yeah,
first ones.
yeah,
Maybe his origin is somebody who has that self awareness of, oh my gosh, I'm capable of hurting other people like this if I have to,
yeah,
for the good of my mission and for the good of saving my own skin.
yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the wonderful Mon Mothma very quickly, who is played by Genevieve. What's her name?
O'Reilly,
Um,
I think.
Genevieve O'Reilly,
O'Reilly,
who
Riley, crap, I can't remember. Yeah,
I've got it written down here somewhere, but Genevieve Riley, O'Reilly, sorry.
it is O'Reilly.
It is O'Reilly. Genevieve O'Reilly has played Mon Mothma and looked like her
Mhm.
since
Yep,
Return of the Sith. Um, Also in 7 episodes of Rebels and
yep,
in Rogue One, and she's back again.
yeah,
Um, and we get to see this different side of her, kind of where she is playing both sides in a very kind of clever way. It's like a spy movie,
yeah.
um, where she's kind of sneaking around. She is
Luthen
not
is sneaking around,
Luthen is not who
taking
he
different
presents himself to be.
disguises. Yep.
Yep. And I think some people are kind of like doing a good job of putting this together, and I just haven't dug into it. But as a quick aside, the shop where Luthen works has a million different Easter eggs in it.
Oh, so many. Utapau, I think, was the one that was mentioned.
Oh, okay,
Um,
yeah.
One of the artifacts that, or the big like weapon that he pulled up. Yeah, that was the Utapau reference there. By the way, her name was Clea, the girl that is in that shop with him, and
Clea.
so I'm
Okay.
wondering if there's a relationship there.
There
Um,
may be.
the other one that was dropped, the scene with Mon Mothma and her husband was uh, difficult,
Yeah.
rough. Like
Yeah.
she's not going to get him this present for him. She's doing it just for the rebellion, and it kind of seems like he's got his side pretty well ironed out because he's invited Sly Moore, who most people be like, "Who the heck is that?" She is always with the Emperor. Uh, when it was announced um, that the Republic would become the Empire, she was right
Mm.
by his side in that moment. She's got the creepiest look on her face, like this is not someone you should be inviting to
Hmm.
the party of the leader of the rebellion. I'm
Yikes.
looking forward to seeing that interaction on screen when that time comes. Like, should be interesting, because of that direct connection to Palpatine. Like, she's 2 degrees removed from him right now.
It's pretty close. It's pretty
um,
close.
how many like the degrees of Kevin Bacon? That's what I went and thought of when I said that.
The degrees of Mon Mothma, the
Yeah,
degrees of
yeah.
Palpatine. Yeah.
But
Uh,
there were some powerful moments in that. Just the few scenes that we got with her to start. Um, yeah, you can tell that this rebellion that she's trying to help start is it's tough, and she's having a hard time moving funds around to support them. Luthen's having a hard time, you know, getting the support that he needs to his little cells that are out there, and uh, it's an interesting it's going to be really cool throughout this to see kind of how the rebellion forms. Like we know we're getting Saw Gerrera later. We're going to see how difficult it is to form a rebellion and be a spy at this time, and how
And
Cassian plays a role in that.
and expensive and how much luck it takes. And you think about what it took to blow up the Death Star. It was, not only building in that vulnerability, but that million to one shot, having the Force, all that stuff. Like you remove any one of those pieces, and all of a sudden the whole saga goes a different way. And it
Yeah,
feels like this is what we're watching here, of each one of these characters, the little things that they do add up to building the foundation for the rebellion. And you
yeah,
take any of those away, like if you took out Luthen in that shootout on Ferrix, this doesn't happen. Rogue One
yeah,
doesn't happen, all that stuff. And it feels like each one of these things, even though some parts are slow, it's like, oh my gosh, this is the backstory.
yeah,
This all these parts are critically important. And also it's so tenuous. It's like, oh my god, we know how it ends, but if
yeah.
you didn't, you would think this may not go their way.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. It's on a thread. It's hanging by a thread, and luckily we know where it ends, but it's tough to see as how difficult it is to start this thing.
yeah,
We have a few more minutes left, and I want to just make sure before we end this, we talk a little bit about Ferrix and the villagers there.
sure.
We kind of alluded to them at the beginning, but um I loved all the interactions that Cassian had in that first episode with the people in the town.
Yep.
We talked about a few, like Brasso, like his friend that he gets to kind of create this life for him, and there was the scene where somebody confronts him about paying him back, and you got that muscle guy behind him that's just like, I was just told to stand here. Like some really interesting moments with all these people. um and you get and then you get Bix and Tim, who there seems like with Bix a history with Cassian, maybe a fallout where they dated for a bit and now they're not anymore. Like when we see the conversation with Marva's like brings up Bix, and he gets really defensive about it. There's a history there, and I wonder
That
if we're going to explore that more.
I think yeah, and I could see Bix kind of coming back in the picture. I think there's a history there. I think that was part of some of Tim with two M's, some of his jealousy and basically and ratting out Andor.
Yeah,
Um, so I think
slightly
there's a complicated
inebriated
past.
when he did it.
Yep. Made the wrong call there. Which
Yeah.
again, I think the way that, by the way, I think the way that they treated him, sadly, is also a commentary on the world we're living in, especially here in the United States. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think there's a complicated past there. Ferrix doesn't seem like it's like a huge place, and so there could have been romantic relationships. There could have been people who are jealous of that. I think we haven't seen the last of a couple of people from Ferrix.
I also think she just cares a lot about him, and that's like she's willing
Truly,
to go out and do things for him. Like when she sees his name being broadcast out there, she tries to hide it. She looks for him. She's like worried about him.
yeah.
So I think there's enough there that we'll see some more happen later on. I'm kind of like, it kind of feels a little bit like Han and Kira. Like I know he doesn't ever have like a romantic attachment to Jin later on in Rogue One, but like you just see the two of them at the end, and like they're just so close. Like
Yeah.
I feel, and that was kind of with Han and Leia. Like nobody else can date Han. What are you talking about? But when Kira comes in, you're like, okay, that works. And then she betrays him,
Yeah.
um, or at least just abandons him. Like I feel like there's something like that with Bix. Like it's going to be building up of his
Uh,
character, not like she's gonna abandon him or something. Not the same thing, but it's kind of it's going to be instrumental to his development and build her into a good character as well. Like I hope we get her for season 2.
yeah, I like that.
She
Which,
seems
by
good.
the way, they're saying season two pre-production has begun, and
Good.
they're gonna be going full steam ahead in November, and then we will probably get the show, I think, at the end of 2023 or early 2024.
I'm
Um,
here for
which is
all of it.
yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. And I also going back to Ferrix though, I wonder about Marva. I wonder if we will ever see her again.
I hope
You know,
so.
I hope so
Yeah.
too.
I mean,
Um,
he's got all these connections with them. Like I said, I think they're going back. I mean, I love the town. Like how much they kind of stood up when those corporal guys came in. Like they just
yeah.
they obviously don't like authority and have their own way of dealing with it. The reckoning and that was such a great scene. Build some great tension there.
Yeah.
I love the bell tower guy. He loves his job, man.
Can I tell you something? I tweeted this today. The bell tower guy, his last name is Bell, the actor. His name is Neil
That's
Bell.
awesome.
Looked him up on IMDb or whatever, and yeah, his name's Neil Bell.
And that's the note we're ending on, folks. And we're not even going to talk about anything else. But I mean, come on, he's one of the best characters.
Neil Liberty Bell is what his friends call him.
Oh, they will be now, at least, with how much he loved his job and how well he did at it. He's
committed. Yeah, he's awesome.
Committed to those few seconds of screen time.
That set a vibe. It set a tone in that town.
Yeah, totally did.
You know what he's credited as?
What? Bell Tower Boy?
The Time Grappler.
That is the coolest name for anyone that's ever rung a bell.
Neil Bell as the Time Grappler.
Quitting my job today to become a Time Grappler.
Yeah, I heard there's a good buck in that. So enjoy that. Live it up.
A machine hasn't replaced it yet, you're saying? Oh wait, yes it has.
You can't grapple like Neil Bell. I mean, I'm looking at you, droids. But yeah, perhaps on that note, we can start to wrap up.
There's so much to talk about with these episodes and this series.
Yeah.
Like we'll be here talking about it again the next time. The next 2 episodes come out, and talking about how Comic-Con went and everything. So look forward to that, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, other Star Wars fans out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, biggest thing to say is just thank you again for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for putting up with our craziness and our inability sometimes to speak English words, or at least my inability to. At the beginning of this, I was really struggling. And hopefully, if you're watching this on YouTube, you enjoyed seeing our faces. But join us next time. We'll talk about the next 2 episodes. We'll keep this train moving and enjoy some casting for the next few weeks. Anything else that you want to say, Jan, before we part?
Hit us up on Twitter at Star Bros Podcast. Follow us, send us a message, let us know what you're thinking about Andor or any other of the Star Wars comic books, anything else you're enjoying. We're always happy to start a conversation there. If you're watching this on the Broaxium YouTube channel, which is our home on YouTube, please do subscribe, follow, leave a comment, let us know what you thought, let us know what you hope to see in Andor. We love hearing people's predictions too. And if you'd like, send us an email, the Star Bros podcast at gmail.com. Excuse me.
You're Englishing well today too.
Yes. We're there too. We're always really happy just to interact with folks. And if you're going to be at New York Comic-Con, let me know. Or Ben, you can let Ben know too. I don't know why I said
let me know. I don't care.
We'd be happy to meet you and say hello and give you some stickers.
Yes.
So hopefully the stickers will be here in time. I hope they'll be here in time. But yeah, just thank you for listening. Thank you for following. Thank you for leaving reviews. We really, really appreciate it. And we're already looking forward to talking about the next 2 episodes of Andor. And that'll be nice because I feel like it's a lot to bite off to try to talk about 4 episodes.
That's a lot.
So us covering 2 next time, plus the High Republic stuff, plus Comic-Con, plus whatever other crazy Star Wars news comes out, that feels more doable.
Yes, totally agree with you. And on that note,
I
will go ahead and wake up my children who just got put to sleep. Are you ready for this?
You don't have to do it super loud because I think most of the people who listen to this have fallen asleep too.
Well, I gotta wake them up to make sure that they know that it's time to really go to bed. Okay. Ready? For it? Are you sure?
Yep.
I'll do it quietly then, since you've made a big deal about it. It's a wrap. What did I do?
That was perfect.
It's so quiet. I don't know.
Good job.
Thank you, man.